When the ruthless Alpha King Alaric witnesses 3 Omega sisters being sold like cattle by their desperate father, his protective instincts override centuries of cold pragmatism. He claims all 3 for an astronomical price, shocking the entire auction square. But as he brings them home to marry his 3 sons, the question that will determine the fate of his kingdom becomes clear. Can 3 broken women learn to trust the very wolves who now hold their freedom in their hands? Will love be enough to heal the wounds that betrayal carved so deep? Thunder crashed overhead as King Alaric's black horse splashed through muddy streets. The marketplace buzzed with whispers about tonight's special auction, something that made even hardened merchants look away in shame. His wolf stirred uneasily inside his chest, sensing trouble ahead. "Make way for the king!" his guard captain shouted, but Alaric barely heard him. A strange pull drew him forward, like invisible ropes tugging at his heart. He'd felt this only twice before, once when he found his mate, and once when she died giving birth to their youngest son. The auction square reeked of fear and greed. Torches flickered in the wind, casting dancing shadows on faces that belonged in nightmares. Rich men clutched bags of gold, while poor families huddled together, grateful they weren't the ones being sold tonight. "What's happening here?" Alaric growled to a nearby merchant. The man's face went pale. "Your Majesty, well, it's Garrett Ashwood. He's selling his daughters to pay his gambling debts." Alaric's blood turned to ice. He knew Garrett, once a proud pack leader, now a broken man who'd lost everything to cards and dice. But selling family? That crossed every line their kind held sacred. A wooden platform stood in the square's center, surrounded by hungry bidders. 3 young women stood there like statues, their simple brown dresses torn and dirty. The oldest couldn't be more than 25, her dark hair falling in waves around shoulders that shook despite her brave stance. The middle sister had auburn curls and eyes that blazed with anger even through her fear. The youngest looked barely 18, golden hair braided down her back as she clutched her sister's hands. "These are my daughters." Garrett's voice cracked like old leather. His once strong frame had withered to skin and bones, his eyes hollow from shame and desperation. "All 3 are pure Omegas, untouched and fertile, perfect for breeding or other purposes." The crowd pressed closer, coins jingling in eager hands. Alaric's wolf snarled, demanding action. These weren't cattle to be sold. They were people with dreams, fears, and futures that deserved protection. "Bidding starts at 100 gold, the auctioneer called out. 200, shouted a fat merchant whose hands already reached toward the platform. 500, yelled another, his smile revealing missing teeth. The oldest sister, Lydia. Someone whispered her name, lifted her chin higher with each bid. Her green eyes swept the crowd like a queen surveying her subjects, refusing to let them see her break. The middle sister, Mira, stood straighter too, her jaw set in determination. But little Sage couldn't hide her terror, tears streaming down her cheeks as strange men discussed her like a prize horse. 800! The crowd roared its approval. Alaric had seen enough. His horse moved forward without conscious command, hooves striking sparks from wet stones. The crowd parted like water before a shark, sensing the predator in their midst. Conversations died. Children ran to their mothers. Even the boldest bidders stepped back. 1,000 gold. His voice carried across the square like rolling thunder. Silence fell so complete that only raindrops on cobblestones could be heard. The auctioneer's mouth hung open. Garrett's face went white as fresh snow. The sisters stared at him with expressions ranging from hope to confusion to outright suspicion. "Your Majesty," Garrett stammered, dropping to one knee despite the mud. I never expected. This is just a simple sale." "Nothing about this is simple." Alaric's words cut through the night air like sword strikes. "Stand up, Garrett. Face what you're doing like the man you used to be." The broken father struggled to his feet, unable to meet his daughter's eyes. They need good homes. I can't provide for them anymore. My debts, if I don't pay." "Your debts don't matter." Alaric's horse stepped closer to the platform, bringing him level with the three sisters. This close, he could smell their natural omega sweetness, mixed with fear and exhaustion. His protective instincts roared to life, demanding he shield them from every hungry stare. What matters is that you're destroying 3 innocent lives to save your own worthless hide. Lydia's eyes widened at his words, as if she'd never heard anyone defend them before. Mira's anger flickered with something that might have been gratitude. Even Sage's sobbing quieted as she listened. 2,000 gold, called out a voice from the crowd. Lord Blackwood, a cruel man known for breaking spirits along with bones. Alaric turned his steel-gray gaze on the challenger. Careful, Blackwood, you're bidding on the future queens of this realm. The Lord's face went ash-pale, and he melted back into the crowd without another word. 3,000! Someone else dared. 10,000. Alaric's voice carried absolute finality. Gold, silver, and enough land to buy this entire square twice over. The auction square erupted in chaos. 10,000 gold was more money than most packs saw in a lifetime. Garrett's legs gave out, and he crashed to his knees, staring at the fortune being offered for his children. The crowd buzzed like angry wasps, some celebrating the drama, while others cursed their missed opportunity. But Alaric only had eyes for the 3 sisters. Lydia stepped forward on the platform, her bare feet confident on the wet wood, despite the circumstances. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly over the noise. Why? Her question was simple, but it held the weight of years of pain. Why would the most powerful alpha in the kingdom want 3 unwanted daughters? The crowd fell silent again, hanging on every word. This wasn't how auctions usually went. The merchandise didn't question the buyer, but Alaric found himself respecting her courage more with each passing moment. Because, he said, swinging down from his horse with practiced grace, no one should be unwanted, and certainly no one should be sold like property in my kingdom. He stepped onto the platform, his presence making it seem suddenly small. The sisters didn't back away, another point in their favor. Up close, he could see the intelligence burning in their eyes, the strength hidden beneath their fear. You still haven't answered my question, Lydia pressed, crossing her arms despite her torn sleeves. What do you really want with us? A smile tugged at Alaric's lips, the first genuine one he'd felt in months. Direct. I like that. My sons could learn from your honesty. Your sons? Mira spoke for the first time, her voice husky with disuse. What do they have to do with this? Everything. Alaric turned to face the crowd, his voice carrying to every corner of the square. I hereby claim these 3 women under royal protection. They will come to my castle as honored guests, not prisoners. Anyone who tries to harm them will answer to me personally. The threat in his words was unmistakable. Several would-be bidders suddenly found urgent business elsewhere, but Sage, the youngest, wasn't satisfied with his proclamation. Honored guests, she repeated, her voice still shaky but growing stronger. That's just fancy words for prettier cages, isn't it? Alaric knelt on one knee, bringing himself to her eye level. The gesture sent another wave of murmurs through the crowd. Then, kings didn't kneel for anyone, especially not Omega girls from broken families. Little wolf, he said gently, I'm offering you choice. Real choice. Probably for the first time in your life. Come with me. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, meet my sons. If you like them, wonderful. If you don't, you'll still have a home, education, and protection for as long as you want it. And if we refuse? Lydia's green eyes searched his face for lies. Then you refuse. I won't force anyone into marriage or bonding, but I also won't leave you here to be sold to the highest bidder. His gaze swept the crowd meaningfully. Look around. Do you see other options? The sisters exchanged glances, a silent conversation that spoke of years protecting each other. Finally, Lydia nodded slowly. We'll come. But we want your word, sworn before witnesses, that we can leave if we choose. You have it. Alaric stood and raised his voice, so every person present could hear. I, King Alaric Greystone, swear by moon and star that these three women are under my protection by choice, not force. They may leave my lands at any time with safe passage and enough gold to start new lives wherever they choose. The formal oath sent another ripple through the crowd. Such promises, sworn publicly, were binding even on kings. Father. Lydia turned to Garrett, who still knelt in the mud. Look at me. He raised his head with obvious effort, shame written across every line of his face. This is goodbye, she said simply. You made your choice when you put us on this platform. We're making ours now. Garrett's mouth opened as if to speak, but no words came. Years of gambling, drinking, and selfishness had finally cost him the only treasures he'd ever truly possessed. He'd have his gold, but he'd lost his daughters forever. Mira stepped forward next, her anger finally finding voice. You taught us that family protects family. Tonight you broke that sacred rule. We owe you nothing now. Even gentle Sage found her courage. I hope the gold keeps you warm at night, because your children won't. The three sisters walked down from the platform together, heads high despite their circumstances. When they reached Alaric, he gestured to his guards. Bring the royal carriage. These ladies have had enough of being displayed for one evening. He turned back to the sisters. And find them proper cloaks. This rain is getting worse. As warm fur-lined cloaks settled around their shoulders, the sisters felt the first taste of true protection in years. But questions still burned in their eyes. What exactly were they walking into? What were these royal sons like? And most importantly, could they trust this powerful alpha who just changed their lives forever? The carriage arrived, gleaming black with the royal wolf crest on its doors. As they climbed inside, leaving the auction square behind, none of them looked back at the man who'd called himself their father, but Alaric did. Garrett knelt alone in the mud, clutching his bag of gold like a lifeline, not yet understanding that he'd just sold his soul along with his daughters. The real story, the king thought grimly, was just beginning. The massive wooden doors of the royal castle crashed open with a sound like thunder, making every servant jump and scatter like frightened mice. King Alaric strode through the entrance hall with three confused Omega sisters, trailing behind him, their bare feet silent on the cold stone floors that had witnessed 1,000 years of royal history. The youngest sister, Sage, kept spinning in circles to stare at the painted ceiling where dragons danced among golden stars, while middle sister Mira clutched her torn shawl tighter and studied every shadow for hidden dangers. But it was eldest sister Lydia who noticed the three young men waiting at the top of the grand staircase, each one tall and broad-shouldered like their father, yet somehow softer around the edges. The one with golden hair wore fancy clothes that screamed, "Future King." The dark-haired one in the middle had scars on his knuckles that whispered, "Warrior," and the youngest with brown hair clutched a leather book, like it might shield him from awkward conversations. "Boys, come down here," Alaric called, his voice echoing off the high walls decorated with ancient weapons and faded battle flags. "Meet your future wives." The words hit the great hall like a lightning bolt. Sage gasped so loud it bounced off the walls 3 times. Mira stumbled backward until she bumped into a suit of armor that rattled like angry bones. Even Lydia, who prided herself on staying calm during disasters, felt her mouth fall open wide enough to catch flies. "Father, what?" The golden-haired prince rushed down the stairs 2 steps at a time, his fancy boots making sharp clicking sounds that reminded everyone of a clock counting down to something terrible or wonderful. "You can't just announce marriages like you're ordering breakfast." "I can, and I did, Kiran," the king replied, with the kind of smile that meant he'd already decided everything and nobody else got a vote. "These ladies need protection. You 3 need wives, and the kingdom needs heirs. Simple math." The scarred prince, Thorn Lydia guessed from the way he moved like a fighter, crossed his arms and glared at his father with eyes the color of storm clouds. Did anyone bother asking the ladies what they want? "We want to go home," Mira whispered, her voice so quiet that everyone had to lean forward to hear her. But we don't have one anymore. The youngest prince, who had to be Dex based on his gentle manner and the way he held his book like a security blanket, stepped forward with careful movements that reminded Lydia of someone approaching a wounded animal. "You're safe here," he said softly. "No one will hurt you or force you to do anything you don't want to do." "Even Mary?" Sage asked, her young voice carrying a challenge that made all three princes exchange surprised glances. "Even Mary," Kieran promised, though something in his green eyes suggested he hoped she might change her mind eventually. The king clapped his hands together, with a sound like breaking branches, making everyone jump again. "Enough talking for now. Mrs. Hendricks!" A plump woman with flour-dusted hands and kind eyes hurried into the hall, her apron flapping behind her like wings. She took one look at the three sisters and immediately switched into the same mode mothers everywhere used when they found stray kittens in the rain. "Oh, you poor dears," she clucked, already herding them toward a side hallway. "Let's get you fed and bathed and into some proper clothes. There's fresh bread in the oven and soup that'll warm your bones." As the sisters disappeared around a corner, following the promise of food and safety, the king turned to his sons with an expression that had launched 1,000 battles and won most of them. "I know what you're thinking." "Do you?" Kieran challenged, his diplomatic training warring with his protective instincts. "Because I'm thinking this is insane, even for you." "I'm thinking those girls have been through hell," Thorne added, his warrior's eye already cataloging the signs of long hunger and constant fear he'd seen in their faces and posture. "And I'm thinking there's more to this story than a simple rescue," Dex concluded, his scholarly mind already working through possibilities like a puzzle with missing pieces. The king nodded approvingly. "You're all correct. But here's what you didn't see. The way the eldest looked ready to fight a dragon to protect her sisters. How the middle one noticed every exit and weapon in this room. And how the youngest asked the right questions instead of just accepting what adults told her." He walked to the tall windows that looked out over the castle grounds, where servants were already spreading gossip faster than wildfire through dry grass. "This kingdom has been at peace too long. We've grown soft, spoiled, forgotten what real strength looks like. Those girls survived something that would have broken weaker people." "So this is a lesson?" Kieran asked, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely buying his father's explanation. "This is survival," the king replied. "Theirs and ours. War is coming, boys. I can smell it on the wind, like smoke from a distant fire. When it arrives, we'll need queens who understand sacrifice, princes who know the value of protection, and a kingdom united by more than just blood and tradition." Outside, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, and somewhere in the castle's guest quarters, three sisters sat down to their first real meal in months, while three princes wondered if their father had just saved them all, or doomed them completely. The attack came 3 weeks later, on a night when the moon hid behind clouds thick as black wool, and the wind howled through the castle walls like hungry wolves seeking entry. Lydia jerked awake in her comfortable bed, the first real bed she'd slept in for over a year, as the sound of breaking glass echoed through the corridors like breaking bones. Metal crashed against metal somewhere below her window, followed by shouts in a language that made her skin crawl with remembered fear. She'd heard those harsh words before, during the worst nights when her father's gambling debts had attracted the wrong kind of attention from the wrong kind of people. "Mira, Sage," she called, throwing open her chamber door to find her sisters already stumbling into the hallway, their nightgowns ghostly white in the dim light from flickering torches. The youngest sister's eyes were wide with terror that reminded Lydia of every nightmare they'd shared in cold, hungry hiding places. "What's happening?" Mira whispered. But before anyone could answer, a masked figure appeared at the end of the corridor, moving with the deadly silence of a professional killer. The assassin raised his blade, its edge gleaming like a silver snake in the torchlight, and Lydia felt time slow down the way it always did during the worst moments of her life. But instead of freezing like she had so many times before, when men with weapons had threatened her family, something new and fierce blazed to life in her chest. "Get behind me!" she snarled, grabbing a heavy brass candlestick from a nearby table and hefting it like a club. The weight felt good in her hands, solid and real and deadly. The assassin laughed, a sound like grinding glass, and lunged forward with movements quick as lightning. But Lydia had spent years dodging her father's drunken swings and creditors' grabbing hands. She knew how to make herself small, how to strike fast, and how to fight dirty when survival was on the line. She swung the candlestick in a wide arc that caught the assassin across his temple, with a wet, cracking sound that echoed off the stone walls. Blood sprayed across ancient tapestries as he stumbled sideways, cursing in that horrible foreign language. "The kitchens," Mira shouted, her voice sharp with desperate intelligence. "There are knives there." The three sisters ran through hallways they were still learning, their bare feet slapping against cold stones, while more sounds of battle erupted from every direction. Lydia's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat, but her mind stayed crystal clear the way it always did during emergencies. They burst through the kitchen doors to find chaos waiting for them. Two more assassins had cornered Mrs. Parse. Hendricks near the bread ovens, their weapons gleaming with terrible purpose, while the kind cook brandished a rolling pin, like it might actually stop trained killers. "Leave her alone!" Sage screamed, with the fury of someone who'd seen too many good people hurt by evil ones. She grabbed a heavy iron pan from the cooking fire and hurled it at the nearest assassin's head with surprising accuracy. The pan connected with a sound like a bell tolling, and the assassin dropped like a stone while his partner spun toward this new threat with murder in his dark eyes. But he'd made the mistake that most men made when facing women. He'd assumed they'd be easy prey. Mira had already armed herself with a butcher knife that looked tiny in her small hands, but deadly sharp against the torchlight. Lydia snatched up a meat cleaver that could probably chop through bone, while Sage grabbed another pan and held it like a shield. "Three little omega mice." The remaining assassin sneered in accented words that dripped with contempt. "This will be quick." He was wrong. The fight that followed was nothing like the elegant sword battles from storybooks. It was brutal, desperate, and over in less than a minute. The assassin was skilled with his blade, but he'd never fought anyone who had nothing left to lose except each other. Mira darted in low, while Lydia attacked from the side, their movements coordinated by years of protecting each other from various dangers. When the killer tried to block Lydia's cleaver, Sage's iron pan caught him in the ribs with a sound like snapping twigs. The assassin fell among the scattered flour and spilled milk, his weapon skittering across the kitchen floor like a metal snake seeking new prey. Mrs. Hendricks stepped over his unconscious body and gathered the three sisters into a hug that smelled of bread, dough, and safety. "Well done, my dears," she said firmly. "Well done indeed." But their celebration was cut short by new sounds from the great hall. Not the clash of human weapons, but something deeper and more primal that made every instinct in Lydia's body scream danger and excitement at the same time. Howls echoed through the castle walls, wild and free and absolutely terrifying. These weren't the sounds of men fighting with steel. These were the voices of predators unleashing their true nature on anyone foolish enough to threaten their territory. "The princes," Sage whispered, her eyes wide with understanding that came from fairy tales and nightmares. "They're not just men." Through the kitchen windows, they could see shapes moving in the courtyard below, shapes too large and quick to be entirely human, with eyes that glowed like golden coins in the darkness. The sounds of battle were changing, becoming more one-sided as inhuman snarls replaced human screams. "Should we help them?" Mira asked, still clutching her bloody knife. "I don't think they need our help," Lydia replied, watching as something with fur and fangs dragged a screaming assassin into the shadows beyond the torchlight. But even as she said it, she felt something shift inside her chest. Not fear of these wolf princes who had shown them nothing but kindness, but a fierce pride that they were strong enough to protect everyone in this castle, including 3 sisters who had finally found somewhere worth fighting for. The castle's bell tower chimed midnight when screams shattered the peaceful darkness. Mira bolted upright in her bed, heart hammering as she recognized her sister Sage's terrified voice echoing through the stone halls. Without thinking, she grabbed the oil lamp from her bedside table and rushed barefoot into the corridor, her nightgown trailing behind her like a ghost. "Sage!" she called out, following the sounds of struggle toward the library wing. Her bare feet slapped against cold stones as she ran, the flame in her lamp dancing wildly with each step. Behind her, she heard heavy footsteps. The princes were awake too. She found Sage pressed against the library's tall windows, tears streaming down her face as she stared at something outside. Dex reached her first, his scholarly robes hastily thrown over his sleeping clothes. His gentle hands touched Sage's shoulders as he tried to turn her away from whatever had frightened her. "Don't look," he whispered, but it was too late. Mira's lamplight revealed what had made her youngest sister scream. Hanging from the old oak tree in the courtyard below was a message written in blood-red paint across a white cloth. "Give back what doesn't belong to you, or watch them burn." Thorn appeared in the doorway, his warrior instincts already alert. His gray eyes scanned the room quickly, taking in every shadow and corner. "Father's been expecting this," he said grimly. "Enemy packs don't give up easily." Kieran arrived last, his future king composure slightly cracked by worry. "Are you hurt?" he asked, looking between the 3 sisters. When they shook their heads, his shoulders relaxed, just a fraction. "Who would do this?" Lydia asked, her voice steady despite the fear in her green eyes. She had appeared silently, as was her way, and now stood close enough to Kieran that their arms almost touched. "Our uncle?" Thorn answered bluntly. "Father's brother has always believed Omega wives make kings weak. He thinks we're distracted by pretty faces instead of focusing on pack strength." Sage looked up from Dex's protective embrace. "Are we making you weak?" she asked in a small voice that broke everyone's heart. "No," Dex said firmly, tilting her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. "You make us stronger. You make us want to be better men." But Mira noticed something the others missed. While they talked, Thorn kept glancing at the window, his nose slightly raised, as if catching a scent. His wolf was close to the surface. She could tell by the way his muscles tensed and relaxed, like he was fighting an internal battle. "There's something else," Thorn said slowly. "I can smell smoke." They all froze. In a castle made of stone and wood, fire was every resident's worst nightmare. Kieran moved to the window and looked out toward the village that spread below the castle walls. Orange light flickered in the distance. "They're burning the farms," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Our people's crops, their winter food stores." Lydia's hands clenched into fists. "Because of us." "No," Kieran said sharply, turning to face her, "because some wolves think fear is stronger than loyalty. They're wrong." A new sound reached their ears, howling. Not the friendly calls they'd grown used to from the castle's wolf residents, but something wild and threatening. Multiple voices joined in, creating a chorus that made the hair on Mira's arms stand up. "How many?" Thorn asked his older brother. Kieran's jaw tightened. "Too many for a direct fight. Uncle brought more allies than father expected." Dex looked torn between his protective instincts and his logical mind. "What do they actually want? Besides us gone, I mean." "The crown," Kieran said simply. "Uncle thinks father's gone soft. 3 Omega wives for his sons proves it, in his mind. He wants to challenge father's right to lead the pack." Sage pulled away from Dex, her young face set with determination that surprised everyone. "Then we leave. Tonight. Before anyone else gets hurt because of us?" "Absolutely not," Thorn growled, his wolf very close to the surface now. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "He's right," Mira said quietly. "We won't run again. We spent years running from our father's debts and mistakes. We won't spend more years running from your uncle's ambition." Lydia nodded slowly. "We stay. But we fight smart, not just brave." What does that mean? Kieran asked, though his tone suggested he already respected whatever plan she might have. It means we use what makes us different, Lydia explained, her voice growing stronger with each word. Your uncle thinks Omega wives make you weak because he doesn't understand what we actually bring to this pack. Which is, Dex prompted, his scholarly curiosity overriding his worry. Connections, Mira answered, understanding her sister's thought process. We've been talking to the Omega women in the castle, in the village. They trust us because we've been where they are powerless, overlooked, underestimated. And? Thorn asked impatiently. And they see everything, Sage finished, her fear transforming into excitement. The cook knows which guards can be trusted completely. The cleaning ladies know every secret passage in the castle. The village women know exactly who's loyal to your father, and who might be swayed by promises. Kieran's eyes widened as he grasped the full implications. You want to build a spy network. We want to build a family network, Lydia corrected. Your uncle thinks in terms of dominance and submission, alphas and omegas. But a real pack is about connection, trust, and everyone contributing their strengths. Another howl echoed outside. Closer this time. Thorn moved protectively in front of Mira, his body radiating tension. Whatever we're going to do, we need to decide fast. They're testing our defenses. Then we test theirs right back, Mira said, surprising herself with her boldness. But not the way they expect. As if summoned by their conversation, King Alaric appeared in the doorway. His weathered face looked older than usual, but his eyes burned with the same protective fire they'd seen that first day at the auction. I heard the commotion, he said simply. Then, looking directly at the three sisters, are you ready for war? Dawn broke gray and cold over the castle walls, but the courtyard buzzed with activity that had nothing to do with normal morning routines. King Alaric stood on the great steps, his commanding presence making even the largest guards look small as he addressed the gathered crowd. Behind him, his three sons flanked their chosen brides in a show of unity that sent a clear message to anyone watching. Today, we face a challenge to our pack's very heart, the king announced, his voice carrying easily across the assembled wolves. Some believe strength comes from fear and dominance alone. We will prove them wrong. In the crowd, Mira spotted familiar faces, kitchen maids who had shared recipes with her, stable boys who had taught Sage to ride, village women who had welcomed Lydia's suggestions for improving the harvest. Their network was already working. But the real surprise came when a messenger arrived, his horse lathered with sweat from hard riding. He dismounted quickly and approached the king with news that made Alaric's expression darken like storm clouds. Your Majesty, the messenger called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. Your brother demands single combat. Winner takes leadership of the pack. If you refuse, he burns the village tonight. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Single combat was an ancient law that couldn't be refused without losing honor. But everyone could see that King Alaric, despite his strength and experience, was no longer young. His brother was 15 years younger and had been training specifically for this moment. I accept, Alaric said without hesitation. No. The voice that cut through the morning air shocked everyone, especially because it came from Sage, the youngest and quietest of the sisters. She stepped forward, her small frame somehow commanding attention, despite being surrounded by warriors twice her size. With respect, Your Majesty, she continued, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. The challenge isn't fair. Your brother chose the timing to give himself every advantage. The law is the law, Alaric replied gently, but his eyes showed appreciation for her boldness. Actually, Dex interjected, moving to stand beside Sage, the law has loopholes if you know where to look. I've been reading the old pack codes all winter. Kieran raised an eyebrow at his youngest brother. Explain. A challenge can be delayed by 24 hours if the defending alpha requests time to choose a champion, Dex said, his scholarly confidence growing as he spoke. The champion can be any pack member in good standing, but then the champion fights to the death in the alpha's place. Thorn pointed out grimly. That doesn't solve anything. It does if the champion is smart instead of just strong, Mira said suddenly, pieces of a plan clicking together in her mind. What if we turned their own tactics against them? Before anyone could ask what she meant, horns sounded from the castle walls. Guards called out warnings as a large group of wolves approached under a white banner of temporary peace. At their head rode a man who looked like a younger, harder version of King Alaric. This had to be the uncle they'd heard so much about. "Brother!" the challenger called out as he dismounted. "Still hiding behind castle walls instead of settling this like real wolves?" "I'm right here, Marcus," King Alaric replied calmly, walking down the steps to meet his brother, in the center of the courtyard. "Though I notice you brought quite an audience." Marcus grinned, showing teeth that were too sharp for human form. "Want to make sure everyone sees who the real Alpha is. These people deserve strong leadership, not some old wolf who's gone soft over pretty Omega faces." "Careful how you speak about my son's chosen mates," Alaric warned, his own wolf rising close to the surface. "Your sons," Marcus laughed harshly. "3 princes who can't even properly claim their women. Where are the mating bonds? Where are the marks? You're all so worried about being gentle that you've forgotten how to be wolves." The insult hit its target perfectly. Kieran stepped forward, his diplomatic nature warring with his wolf's instinct to defend his mate's honor. Thorn's hand moved to his sword hilt, while Dex's scholarly calm cracked to show the predator underneath. But it was Lydia who surprised everyone by walking calmly down the steps to stand between the two brothers. Her green eyes met Marcus's challenging stare without flinching. "You speak of mating bonds as if they're simple things," she said clearly, her voice carrying to every person in the courtyard. "But true bonds aren't claimed by force or marked by teeth. They're built through choice, trust, and time." "Pretty words from a pretty mouth," Marcus sneered. "But when danger comes, will pretty words protect this pack?" "Let's find out," Lydia replied, then did something that made everyone gasp. She began removing the simple leather cord that held her hair back, letting her auburn locks fall free around her shoulders. In wolf culture, an unmated Omega, loosening her hair in public, was either an invitation or a declaration of war. "Lydia, no," Kieran said urgently, moving toward her, but she held up one hand to stop him, while never taking her eyes off Marcus. "I invoke an Omega's right of trial by wisdom," she announced, her voice ringing across the suddenly silent courtyard. Even Marcus looked stunned. The right hadn't been invoked in over a century, but it was still law. An Omega could challenge any Alpha's decision if she believed it would harm the pack's well-being. If she won the trial, her judgment stood. If she lost, she faced exile or death. "You don't know what you're doing, girl," Marcus said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. "I know exactly what I'm doing," Lydia replied. "I'm protecting my pack, all of it, including the parts you can't see, because you're too busy looking for things to dominate." King Alaric watched his future daughter-in-law with something like awe in his eyes. "The trial requires 3 challenges," he said formally. "Wisdom, courage, and sacrifice. Do you understand the stakes?" "I understand that some things are worth risking everything for," Lydia answered, then looked directly at Kieran, "including love." The mating bond that had been growing stronger between them for months suddenly blazed to life, visible to every wolf in the courtyard as a golden thread connecting their souls. Kieran's eyes widened in shock and wonder as he felt the full force of her love and determination flow through their new connection. "Impossible," Marcus breathed. "Bonds don't form like that. They require the claiming ritual, the marking." "They require truth," Sage interrupted, stepping up beside her sister. "And we've been living in truth for months now." As if triggered by her words, the bond between Dex and Sage flared to life as well, followed immediately by the connection between Thorn and Mira. 3 golden threads now shimmered in the morning air, making the sisters glow with power that had nothing to do with dominance and everything to do with love freely given. The trial begins at sunset. Marcus finally managed, his earlier confidence completely shaken. 3 challenges. If any of them fail, all 3 Omegas forfeit their lives. Accepted, Lydia said simply. As Marcus and his followers withdrew to prepare, the courtyard erupted in amazed whispers about the spontaneous mating bonds. But Mira barely heard them. She was too busy staring at the golden thread that connected her heart to Thorn's, wondering what she had gotten herself and her sisters into. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. King Alaric smiled for the first time all day. "Now we trust in the wisdom of the women who chose us," he said, "and we prepare for the most important trial our pack has ever faced." The silver moon hung like a broken promise above the castle walls when Sage collapsed during her morning walk. Her scream cut through the dawn air, sharp enough to wake every wolf within miles. Dex found her first, his books scattered across the courtyard as he dropped everything to catch her falling body. Blood pooled beneath her, dark and wrong, while her wolf whimpered inside her chest like a dying bird. "Get the healer!" Dex shouted, his voice cracking with fear he'd never felt before. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not now. Not when everything was finally perfect. Inside the castle, Lydia felt the pain hit her like a physical blow. The bond between sisters ran deeper than blood, deeper than pack law, and Sage's agony became her own. She doubled over in the great hall, Kieran's strong arms the only thing keeping her from hitting the stone floor. Mira burst through the doors, her face white as winter snow. Thorn closed behind with his jaw set in that dangerous way that meant someone was about to pay. "What's happening to her?" Lydia gasped, fighting to breathe through the shared pain. The old healer, bent and wise, examined Sage with gentle hands, while Dex paced like a caged animal. "Rejection sickness," she announced, her voice heavy with centuries of knowledge. "Her wolf is fighting the mating bond." The words hit the room like thunder. Everyone knew what rejection sickness meant. It killed slowly, painfully, eating away at the connection between human and wolf until nothing remained but an empty shell. Most didn't survive it. "That's impossible," Dex said, his scholarly mind refusing to accept it. "She loves me. I know she does." But the healer shook her head sadly. "Love isn't always enough, young prince. Sometimes the heart wants what the wolf cannot accept." King Alaric entered then, his presence filling the room like storm clouds. He'd seen rejection sickness before, back when he was young and foolish enough to think he could force love where it didn't grow naturally. His own brother had died from it, pining for a mate who chose another. "How long does she have?" he asked quietly. "Days, maybe weeks if she's strong. But she's fighting herself, tearing apart from the inside. The only cure is acceptance. Or what?" Thorn demanded, his warrior's instincts seeking a battle he could win. "Complete severance. Cut the bond entirely. Let her wolf run free. But she'd never be able to mate again. She'd be alone forever." Sage stirred on the bed, her green eyes fluttering open. When she saw all the worried faces surrounding her, fresh tears started falling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I want to love you, Dex. I want this to work." Dex knelt beside the bed, taking her small hand in both of his. "Then what's wrong, little star? Tell me what's frightening your wolf." The pet name made her sob harder. She'd loved it when he first called her that, loved how it made her feel special and bright. But now it felt like a chain around her throat. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "Scared of being owned again. Scared of losing myself in someone else's wants and needs, even yours." The truth hung in the air like poison gas. Everyone in the room felt it, the way fear could twist love into something ugly and suffocating. Lydia moved closer, her own bond with Kieran strong enough that she could speak from experience. "Being mated doesn't mean disappearing, Sage. It means becoming more yourself, not less." "Easy for you to say." Sage shot back, pain making her cruel. "You were always the strong one. You knew how to fight back. I just survived by being small and invisible." Mira stepped forward then, her quiet voice carrying wisdom born from her own struggles. I thought Thorn would want me to be like the other warriors' mates, tough and fierce and unafraid of everything. But he fell in love with me, because I grow gardens and read poetry, and cry at sunset. He doesn't want to change me. How do you know? Sage asked desperately. How do you know he won't get tired of who you are, and want someone different? Thorn answered before Mira could. Because I already had someone different. Before you three came here, I was with others who were everything I thought I wanted. Strong fighters, fearless hunters, and I was miserable. He moved to stand beside Mira, his scarred hand gentle on her shoulder. I don't want you to be like them. I want you to be exactly who you are, soft heart and all. Dex squeezed Sage's hand tighter. And I don't want you to be my little star because you're small. I want you to be my little star because you shine brighter than anything in my world. Sage closed her eyes, feeling her wolf pace restlessly. The animal side of her was still afraid, still expecting betrayal and abandonment. But the human part of her could see the truth in Dex's face, could feel the sincerity in his touch. What if I can't do it? She whispered. What if my wolf never accepts the bond? King Alaric stepped forward, his voice carrying the weight of years and regret. Then we let her go. No one will force you to stay, little one, not even death. The promise settled something wild in Sage's chest. Choice. Real choice. Not the illusion of it. For the first time since the sickness started, her wolf stopped pacing and listened. 3 months later, the castle bells rang out across the kingdom like silver laughter dancing on the wind. But this wasn't the grand celebration everyone expected. Instead of a massive royal wedding, 3 small ceremonies took place in different parts of the castle grounds, each one perfect for the couple it joined. Lydia and Kieran wed at sunrise in the throne room, surrounded by the advisors and nobles who would one day call her queen. Her dress was simple white silk, practical and elegant, while Kieran wore the formal crown that marked him as heir. Their vows spoke of partnership and shared responsibility, of ruling together with wisdom and compassion. I promise to stand beside you, Lydia said, her voice clear and strong. Not behind you or in front of you, but as your equal in all things. Kieran's response made several of the older nobles shift uncomfortably. I promise to listen before I speak, to ask for your counsel before I act, and to remember that a kingdom is only as strong as its people believe it to be. When they kissed, sealing the bond that would one day rule the realm, every wolf in the room felt the power shift. The future queen had been a slave just months ago. Now she would help guide their world into something better. Mira and Thorn's ceremony happened at noon in the castle gardens, surrounded by the flowers she'd coaxed into bloom and the vegetables that would feed the pack through winter. Thorn had traded his armor for simple clothes, looking younger and happier than anyone had seen him in years. I used to think strength meant never being afraid, he admitted as they exchanged rings. But you taught me that real strength means being afraid and choosing love anyway. Mira's hands shook as she placed his ring on his finger. I promise to tend our love like a garden, to water it with attention, give it room to grow, and never let the weeds of doubt take root. Their kiss tasted like strawberries and sunshine, and the garden itself seemed to celebrate, releasing the sweet scent of jasmine into the warm air. But it was Sage and Dex's ceremony that surprised everyone most. It took place at midnight in the castle library, with only their families present and candles providing the only light. Sage wore a dress of deep blue that made her look like the night sky itself, while Dex had flowers braided into his hair, a tradition from the old country that symbolized new growth. I was so afraid of losing myself in you, Sage whispered, as they stood between towering shelves of books. But I learned that love isn't about losing yourself. It's about finding parts of yourself you never knew existed. Dex's voice was thick with emotion when he replied, You made me brave enough to show you every piece of my heart, even the broken parts. I promise to do the same for you, always. When they kissed, every candle in the library flared brighter for just a moment. as if the very air around them had caught fire with joy. The celebration afterward was unlike anything the kingdom had ever seen. Instead of formal dancing and stuffy speeches, there was laughter and storytelling, good food, and better company. The three couples moved through the crowd together, no longer the broken people who'd arrived in chains, but strong individuals who'd chosen to build something beautiful together. King Alaric watched his sons with their new wives and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Complete peace. His kingdom was safe, his family was happy, and the future looked brighter than it had in generations. As the night wound down, the three sisters found themselves alone on the castle's highest balcony, looking out over the lands they now called home. "Do you ever miss it?" Sage asked quietly. "The simplicity of being nobody important?" Lydia considered the question seriously. "Sometimes. But then I remember what we've built here, what we've become, and I know this is where we belong." Mira nodded, her arm around her youngest sister's shoulders. "We're not the same people who stood on that auction block. We're stronger now. We're home." Below them, the kingdom slept peacefully under their protection. Three women who'd once been sold like cattle now held the future in their hands, ready to write a story the world would remember forever.